Hi everyone.
My name is Darcy.
And my name is Nick. We have a show for you today all about really awesome animal adaptations. And if you guys don't know what animal adaptations are, it's kind of like if you were playing a sport, you would need some equipment or some padding to help you make that sport easier or make it more fun and help make you better at that sport. So football would be a really good example, because you want to wear pads and stuff while you're wearing football, or in a helmet, because if you get tackled without that, it's going to hurt pretty bad. So animals out in the wild also have adaptations that help them survive and thrive in the wild, like our friend Mika here, who is a kinkajou.
Mika is also known as a honey bear, and she gets that name for two reasons. First, because her coat is the color of honey. She's got that really gorgeous golden fur, but also she loves sweet things. So she eats honey all the time, and fruits, maybe some vegetables, pollen from flowers. And what she's going to do is, like I mentioned that coat before, it's extremely thick fur. And so what kinkajous can do out in the wild is they can find a beehive filled with honey. They can stick their head and their hands inside that hive and not get stung by bees, because that fur is so thick. It's a really great adaptation for them.
And Mika also has a lot of adaptation to help her climb into trees, because that's where she spends most of her time. And she really likes to get fruit on trees, so she uses her really cool, she has a prehensile tail, which means she can completely hang from her tail just like that. If there's fruits that are hanging too low for her to grab with just her hands, she can support her entire body weight from her tail. And she likes to go to the bathroom in trees, because that's where she lives. So this is just a fun treat for you guys. But she also has really cool wrists, and when she's climbing up and down trees, she can rotate them completely around so that she can climb down trees a lot easier.
So you can see Katie's feeding her grapes right now, and she has to turn her head sideways to eat those because they're so big for her. But her mouth, her teeth, it's actually a carnivore mouth. So you would think that she would be a carnivore, that she would eat meat, some rodents, maybe some birds. But she's actually a frugivore, so that means she eats all fruit and those honey sweet things that I was talking about earlier.
Exactly. And since Mika does live in the trees all the time, how I was saying, she has those wrists that turn all the way around. She also has really long claws and nails that help her grip onto trees, because it'd be really hard to climb through up and down trees without having something to grip onto. So there's Mika. Thank you for bringing Mika up, Katie.
So Mika had a really cool tail, but so does our next guest. And this is Urban, and Urban is a 3-year-old baby alligator. So he is 3, and he looks mighty small to be 3 years old already. But that's because alligators only grow about a foot a year. So they grow really, really slowly, but when they get to be full grown, they can be about 2 of those benches pushed together. So they can reach 8 to 9 feet long.
Yeah, and speaking of them growing, right now, when they're babies, they have those stripes on the side, because when they're younger alligators, they're going to live closer to the shallow part of the water, so those stripes in the lighter colors are going to blend in with the reeds along the coast. But as they grow older, they're going to turn all that dark color, because they're going to live in the darker, murky waters, and they live pretty much all the way underwater. You can pretty much only see their eyes and their nostrils on top of the water, so that really dark skin is really going to be helpful with blending in with the murky water.
And as Nick mentioned, her nostrils and eyes are on top of her head, so that's a really great adaptation for hunting, because she can go into the shallower, murky waters where she's still hidden with her eyes and nose just poking out. So maybe a deer or a gazelle or something is going to walk over to the side to get a drink of water, and the gator can hop out without being seen and take down that gazelle. And then they also use the refrigerator, or the lake as a refrigerator.
And we're just going to continue with animals with really cool tails. This is Trestle. He's called a tamandua, sometimes called a lesser anteater. If you guys have seen a giant anteater, they're much bigger than this. This is why he's called a lesser anteater. And based off his name, you guys can probably guess he eats mostly ants out in the wild, and his tongue is perfect for that. It's about 16 inches, 16 centimeters long. And that can dig really far down into ant hills, and it also has little tiny barbs all over his tongue that helps grip onto those ants as well.
So he's got those really, really sharp claws in the front of him, and he uses those for defense mostly, but he was saying they like to eat ants. They also like termites. So what they can do is go up to a termite mound. They're going to salivate a lot before they crack this mound open, because their saliva is super, super sticky. So as soon as they pry their claws in there and pry open the termite mound, those termites are all going to get stuck in his saliva and on his tongue, and he's going to get his favorite snake.
Exactly. And Trestle here is from South America and the rainforest, but we have a lot of cool animals right here in Ohio, like our friend Sheldon, and he is an eastern screech owl.
You guys may think he looks like a baby owl, but he is actually full grown. He's only 2 years old, so he is still pretty young, but he is never going to get any bigger than that. Screech owls are actually the second smallest owl species that lives right here in Ohio. So you can find these guys in your backyard, living amongst the trees. They're pretty cute, but they're also extremely loud. They're called a screech owl for a reason.
Yes, they are. And they do call out in the wild, but also in the wild, they need to find their prey. And as you can see, and as you've probably seen a lot, owls like Sheldon can turn their head almost all the way around. It's not quite 360 degrees, it's about 270 degrees. And the reason that they have to do that is because they're not like us, where we can move our eyes from side to side. Their eyeballs are so big that inside of their skull, they don't have enough room for eye muscles, so they can't move it side to side. It would be like if we had eyes the size of cantaloupes in our skull. So it's pretty big eyes for such a small bird.
Very large. So you'll also see he has those huge talons and that beak. So he doesn't have hands to use a knife and fork like we do. So he has to be able to pry open his mice, moles, maybe smaller lizards with something. So he's going to use that beak and those talons, which is why Amy is walking around with a glove on. And he is fully flighted. But did you guys know that owls are actually silent flyers? So in Harry Potter, when the owls are all flying into that Great Hall and they're making a whole bunch of noise, that's a lie. It's a myth. Owls have serrated feathers, so they are completely silent flyers.
Yes. So that is Sheldon, and he is our eastern screech owl. You can find him right here in Ohio, even though they are a little small, so you might not see him. And Sheldon lives up in the trees, but this is Eliza, and she lives down in the ground. She's called an echidna, a short-beaked echidna, and they're from Australia.
These guys are pretty unique in pretty much every aspect of their life. One of the coolest things about them is they are a monotreme. And that is the same as a platypus. So that means they are egg layers. Sorry. Egg layers. But they are a mammal. So that's a pretty unique thing to them, but it's also really helpful out in the wild, because if they're running around with a baby stashed away somewhere, they would have to worry about it, but having an egg, they can just keep that egg nice tucked away, and predators will generally leave it alone because they're pretty good at hiding.
And echidnas are pretty weird animals. They actually secrete milk from their armpits. So if we were sweating in our armpits, that's just pretty gross in itself. But if we sweat milk, that'd be even grosser. But Eliza and other echidnas, their armpits secrete milk, and they have milk secreting glands in their armpits. So she's a pretty weird animal.
You see those pretty awesome claws on the front of her and those spines on her back. She's a really good burrower. So if Emma were to put her down in the grass, she would disappear within a minute probably. She's really great at digging. They like to spend most of their time under the ground, and those spines are actually spines. They're not quills. So she cannot shoot those, and she cannot detach them from her body like a porcupine can. They are stuck to her. They're just kind of like modified hairs. So those are just like the hair on our head. But our next friend also likes to spend a lot of time on the ground, but as babies, they actually spend a lot of time in the trees, which is why they have this really great coloration. It's called counter shading. So the top of her is really dark, and the bottom of her is very light, just like the alligator we saw earlier. And that counter shading helps them stay camouflaged out in the wild. So when she's up in the trees, if she's a baby, if an animal is down on the ground looking straight up, she's going to blend in with the sun. But if once she's this age and a lot larger, she'll be on the forest floor, and if a bird or something is looking down on her, she's also going to blend in with the decomposing matter on the floor.
Yes, and this is Ellie Mae. She's our red-tailed boa constrictor. Right now, she's about 9.5 feet long, but full-grown, they can be 13 feet, which is extremely long for, well, I guess not for a snake, but it's just long in general. And like other boa constrictors, Ellie Mae actually swallows whatever she eats whole. And how she does that is she'll completely wrap around that prey and squeeze them until they can't breathe anymore, and that's how she'll kill them. And then she'll eat them whole, but their jaws are completely different from ours. Ours can only open as far as we can open our mouths, but snakes actually have like a rubber band type jaw where it can open really wide this way, and in the front their jaw can separate so it can open really wide that way too, and that's how she can eat something it's twice as big as the widest part of her body. So she eats very large things. So right here in about the middle, Ellie Mae is this wide around, so she can swallow something about this big whole, which is pretty crazy.
It is pretty crazy. But do you guys know that you never want to get into a staring contest with any kind of snake? And do you know why? Anyone have a guess? No? What's your guess? Very true. Snakes cannot blink. They actually have a scale covering their eyeballs, just like the rest of their body. So about once a month, maybe a little less than that, when they shed off all of those scales, that eye cap is going to come off with it. So they don't need to be able to blink.
Exactly. And just like all of our other animals, Ellie Mae has a ton of adaptations. And here at the zoo, all of the animals within the zoo have adaptations that help them survive in the wild. But it's up to us to help it's up to us for it to be easier for them to survive in the wild.
True. So when you guys came to the zoo today, part of your admissions money went towards helping conservation efforts for animals all around the world. And just like a lot of the animals you saw here, money is going to go towards helping them. And it's a great thing, but you can also do a couple more things at home. You can recycle, maybe turn the water off while you're brushing your teeth. You can turn the lights off in your house. So you can be helping these animals every single day. And we really appreciate you guys showing up for our 5 o'clock show today, seeing all these great animals with great adaptations. And we hope to see you back here again someday.
Bye,
Thanks
guys.
for coming, guys.
And feel free to come get a closer look at some of our animals. You may be able